Hello. I didn't understand any of that. Hi, I'm Trisha. Yes, I live in Spain. As you can tell by my Spanish accent, no, I'm actually English and I live in Spain. And I thought that I didn't understand any Spanish until I came here and I'm like, I do not understand any Russian at all. Yes. So I'm going to talk to you in English. I'm going to get my slides up so you can see what I'm going to talk about. But it doesn't really matter too much about what I'm going to be saying, because what I'm going to be doing is demonstrating a lot of stuff on the screen. So feel free to ignore what I'm actually saying and just look at what I'm showing on the screen. In this talk, I'm going to be demonstrating IntelliJ IDEA. And this is a really nice opportunity for me, because what I usually do is I go to big Java conferences and I talk to Java developers about how to do Java stuff, incidentally showing some IntelliJ IDEA features. But at a JetBrains event, I can actually just focus entirely on the IntelliJ IDEA features and not just have to teach the Java stuff. Who is a Java developer? Quite a lot of you, most of you, good. There are tips in here which apply to all of the IDEs, but obviously there's a bit of a focus on the Java side of stuff because that's largely what I do. Should we just get started? Yeah, let's just get started. When you're opening IntelliJ IDEA, I first want to ask you a question. This talk is not terribly structured, by the way, as you might notice. Who's using Java 12? No one. Good, excellent. In production? No. Java 11? Oh, good. In production? No, don't be silly. 10, Java 10? Okay. Java 9? You shouldn't be using 9 or 10, you should be using 11. Java 8? Good. Java 7? Okay. Java 6? Are you Android? Yeah, okay, fine. Anything earlier than Java 6? Oh, thank God. Oh, really? Okay. You poor, poor thing. All right, I'm glad most of you are on Java 8 because this is kind of more geared to people like you. Let's get started. When you start IntelliJ IDEA, this is usually the sort of thing that you see. And so what we've got is we have our project window on the left-hand side, we have our navigation bar at the top, we have our tabs at the top, we have breadcrumbs down here at the bottom, and then we have like tool buttons along the side, which is how like lots of people get around the IDE, especially when they get started. We're not going to use any of that because we're pros. So the first thing we do is go into professional mode. So I'm going to turn off all of those things. And I'm going to turn them off using find action. So if you pick no other tip out of this talk, the thing you should pick up is find action is your go-to for like everything, or search everywhere, it's the same thing. So as I do stuff, you should see at the bottom the thing I'm doing and the keyboard shortcut that you're going to use to do it. Let's do it again so that it comes up. Now I can see all of you lot at the back going, I can't see it. I'm going to see if I can actually move that to the top. Would that be helpful, if I move it to the top? All right, let's see if I can do that. So this is a plugin called Presentation Assistant. And then I should be able to do nothing with it, apparently. Oh, plugins, color scheme. No, that's not what I want. I want it at the top. Okay. All right, forget what I just said. At the top of the screen, you will see the keyboard shortcuts that I'm using. You'll see it for for the Mac and for Windows/Linux. So now I'm going to use find action to turn off all the stuff I don't want to see on the screen. So I don't want to see toolbar buttons. I'm going to take those off. I don't want to see editor tabs. Oh, now I see why I don't have Presentation Assistant at the top. Turn that off, turn it off, turn it off. Oh my God, like what is wrong with this? This is the live demo thing. Let's try it again. Tab, top. I do this all the time. Why is it not working? Can someone help me? No. All right, fine. We won't do that then. Let's turn off the navigation bar. Navigation. navigation bar. That's better. So that's gone away. That was at the top. And let's maximize the screen. What is this? What is going on? Does someone are there Russian hackers trying to control my laptop? Is that what's going on? Okay, I think it's because, oh my God. Hadi, buy me a new laptop. Breadcrumbs. Let's turn off the breadcrumbs, editor breadcrumbs. Don't show the breadcrumbs, and the tab none. I know why, because it needs to be tab none. There we go. Fine. I still can't do... Oh my God, this is like 2 tips in and you haven't seen anything. Right, let's just carry on with something that works. Fine. So, given that I've just got rid of all of the navigation bars, all of the buttons, you're thinking, well, some of you are thinking, I know all this stuff, I'm advanced, you can go to sleep, that's fine. But some of you are thinking, how do I get around now? So what you're going to do is you're going to do things like Control-E, which will give up your recent files, so you can navigate really easily to any of the recent files that you've navigated to. You can use things like Alt and 7, no, Alt and 9 for your version control window. You can use Alt and 7 for structure, as you saw. You can use Alt and 1 to get to the project window. And if you don't remember any of these keyboard shortcuts, what you use is you use Control and E, and then you type in the window that you want. And so you can open up the Gradle window, for example. So you don't need to remember half of these keyboard shortcuts. You just open up this and say, which window do I want? I want VCS, version control. And then you can open that up. Then you can use the keyboard shortcut that isn't working because I probably forgot what it is. And if someone wants to remind me what it is, that'd be really good, which is, it's not supposed to be Control-Shift page down. It's supposed to be, I know why. It is the surface. Ta-da! Shift-Control F12 just maximizes the editor. So this is the window we want to be looking at when we're coding. We don't want any of the nonsense around the outsides. We just want to focus on just the editor itself. So the other way to navigate around is we can navigate directly to a class by doing something like extract. I can't see anything now, I've moved all of that to the top. So extract functional parameter, for example. I can navigate directly to a class, and you'll notice that I don't have to type the whole thing. I don't have to type this. I can use camel case, so I can use the beginnings of all the words. I can also use partial names. So if I type switch, I can get to generate switch branches from there. I can also use a similar thing to do navigate to file. So if I'm looking for not a class, but a file, I can use Control, Shift, and N to get to a file. So then I can get to, for example, my Maven file. I can use Control, Shift, Alt, and N to navigate to a symbol, like, let's say, get ID. And if I want to, I can limit the namespace of those results by saying order, or for example, .getID. And then I can navigate directly to a method. So that's kind of super useful if you know there's a method in the code base which does the thing that you want, and you can just jump directly to that method. Don't go to the project window and scroll down and find the class and navigate to the method. Just go straight to that method. Right, what else can we do? So we can do things like I've lost the plot now completely. Right, so all of this was like I was doing Control-N to get to class, Control-Shift-N to get to files. But you can see the search box is the same search box. I can actually just tab through all of those things. So I can search for all, classes, files, symbols, actions. Actions is what I was using to turn off things. And all will show you everything, which includes things like run configurations. So I could look for things like where I ran something recently. So if I don't know where something is, what I'm going to do, or I don't know what I'm looking for, I double tap Shift, and I get search everywhere. I can type something in there, and I will be given a whole bunch of options for what that thing is that I'm looking for. Okay, and also there's commands in here. So I could do /editor, for example, and it will give me all of the top hits to do with the editor. Other commands are things like debug, inspections, intentions. So I even get help and sort of auto-completion even when I'm searching for stuff in IntelliJ IDEA. And then if the thing that I'm looking for isn't here or isn't easily accessible, so I find myself looking for the Gradle window a lot because I haven't assigned a keyboard shortcut to it. But if I type Gradle, I get loads of options in here. So what I could do, if I want to make sure Gradle is always the top hit, I can go to the key map in settings. Let's go to the key map. I can look for Gradle. So this is my Gradle window, and I can add an abbreviation. So I could say something like GRD, and then when I search for GRD, Gradle will be my top hit, because that's my shortcut set of characters I assigned to that thing. I discovered that last week, and I've been using it ever since, because it's just so useful. All right, so let's do a bit more navigation. Let's find ourselves a class. So if I'm in a class, one of the things I quite often do, because I do test-driven development, or at least I do automated testing of my stuff, is I want to navigate between my class and the test for the class quite a lot. So I'm going to use Shift, Control, and T to navigate to the test for a class. And I can use the same key combination to navigate back to the thing that I'm testing. So I'm going to use that a lot for testing. Another way that I can navigate forwards and backwards is, this is where my fingers know what to do, and I don't know what the shortcut is. So Control, Alt, and left arrow for back, and Control, Alt, and right arrow for forwards. So if I want to go back through my history, that's what I'm going to do. There's a new feature which I found super useful, which is kind of similar to that, which is Control, Shift, and E, and that will give me all my recent locations. So instead of having to think of a class or a method or a file, I can actually just go, okay, I was in this bit of the code. You can see these are all in the same class. They're all in Java 8 inspections, but they're all different locations within that class. So I can jump to a specific location that I've been to recently. So I think that's really useful, especially if you have realistic code bases with very large classes and you just want to go to the bit that you were recently editing. All right, let's write some code. Let's create a class. Where are we? So here, I'm going to use Alt and Insert to create a new Java class. I'm going to call this test to delete. Otherwise, I end up with loads of things in here. I can't remember if I'm supposed to delete them or not. And then, of course, we're going to use live templates. So if you're going to do a typical Hello World class, you do public static void main, tab, and it types all of that stuff for you. And then I'm going to say sout to do system.out, and then I'm going to say hello. And then it's just a few key characters to, just a few key presses to write a typical Hello World application. There's an argument here that, Java is a little bit heavy on the boilerplate because I had to write all of that just to output hello. But, that's what IntelliJ IDEA is there for, so that it can make our lives a lot easier for us. And I won't complain about Java being heavy on boilerplate. And I know the answer is Kotlin, but I'm still a Java developer. Right, so that's live templates. So live templates mean that we don't have to write a lot of stuff, which is nice. And you can also use a combination of live templates, refactoring, postfix completion to do all of the typing for you. So, for example, let's see, we could have, let's put something here, which is like name. I'm going to refactor this to name. So I don't have to type most of that stuff. And then let's say I want to do something like, what might I want to do? I might want to test that name is not null. And then it will just write me an if not null if statement. So that's nice. And then I can just print out the name. And then if I do sout v, I get an option to output the variable, and I'm going to use name. So that's really cool. Of course, you shouldn't be using system.out.println to do your logging. You're supposed to use a logger, but you sometimes do these things. So that is writing code. So we had a bit of postfix completion there. We can also use postfix completion for things like, let's do another name, something. And I can just assign that to a variable by doing that. And then it will just do that stuff for me. So I quite like postfix completion because it allows you to keep typing forwards instead of going back and retyping stuff at the beginning. So it's a nice way of always thinking forwards and staying in the flow as you're coding. Okay. What else can we do? Oh yes, so I guess you probably know code completion because you probably use it all the time. So we have, obviously we get code completion without even doing anything. We just type the full stop and we get completion. If we do control and space, we get basic completion. If we do control shift and space, we get smart type. Oh, so this is more useful inside an if. So let's say we do an if statement. This is my favorite keyboard shortcut, along with the other 25 favorite keyboard shortcuts that I've got. Complete statement. So I typed if, I pressed shift, control, and enter, and it filled in all of the rest of the if for me, so I don't have to do any of the braces stuff. And now I don't remember what I was going to do. Oh yes, so let's say I'm doing something, I want to do a check on something. So when I do smart completion here, it will just give me a list of all the methods which return Boolean, because I'm inside an if, so I'm probably going to be doing some sort of Boolean check. So that's the difference between basic completion, which of course we won't call stupid completion, we'll call it basic completion, and smart completion. And then there's like another type of completion. So we've got hippie completion, which allows you to do, let me see, you can start something like, and if you do alt and /, you basically cycle through all of the things which match what you want. And then you just basically keep going there. It includes things like the actual text itself. So that's quite an interesting use case as well. Now I use my favorite shortcut, another favorite shortcut. Yes, I have many favorites. Control Y to just like delete the line because I was in the middle of doing something. And I wasn't going to speak really fast because I was going to take my time while I explained all of this stuff, but I get really excited about all of these things, so I speak a bit faster than I should do, I'm sorry. Right. You can do things, so you can move code around while you're doing stuff. So for example, you can move statements around. If you do move statement up, you see what it did is it moved all of the whole if statement just by me being on the top line of the if statement, and that was using shift, control, up and down. So that would just move a whole statement around. If I want to, I can move just a line, which makes no sense because it's then incorrect, but you can do that if you want to. It might make more sense in a text file, for example. And then you can also do Control W to kind of expand your selection for what you want to move around. So I can jump that whole method up and down. And I can do Control-Shift-W to reduce the scope of my selection, all the way down to where I started. You don't have to memorize all of these tips and shortcuts, by the way. If you come out of here learning one thing, I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to bombard you with as many things as possible. And if you just sit there and go, okay, that's the one I want, that's fine. Then you can go to sleep. I'm okay with that. Right. Parameter information, parameter hints. I've got so many things to show. I've got like a list of 500 things. Let's look at parameter hints. When I worked at my last organization, I worked on a code base which was, let's call it a realistic code base, where we had a lot of parameters, like we had a lot of methods that took parameters like this, where you would pass in like nulls and integers and string values and booleans and stuff, and you had no idea what those values represented. Now, parameter hints have probably they've been in the IDE for a while now, so you've probably all seen them a bunch of times, but I still find them extremely useful for not very readable code like this. But sometimes you do find that this is not super useful. So for example, generate service name with a parameter name hint of n, that's not enormously helpful. So I can say, do not show hints for current method, and I can get rid of the hints for the methods that I'm not interested in. Obviously, I can turn hints off across the code base if I want to, but I generally tend to prefer to tweak the methods which I don't need the hints for. It just cleans up it makes it more readable. And parameter name hints came in for enumerations recently. I don't think it was this release, I think it was the one before that. Oh yeah, and something new I discovered the other day. Let's have a look for... you can, so normally if I've got a string or a value and I type, oh, it's going to do it now. Let me show you the setting before I show you what it does. It is, where is it? Smart keys. Surround selection on typing quote or brace. So if you turn that on, which I've just turned on, then when I've got something selected and I type like a quote, it will put the quote around the thing I selected. Or if I type a brace, it will put parentheses around it as well. So I don't have to go to the beginning of the line, open my parentheses, go to the end of the line, and close my parentheses. I can just select what I want and then do that, like that, which is, I think that's really cool. Right, language injections. Talking about strings. Oh no, while we're in strings, let's talk about strings. So you probably know this already. I can obviously break a string and IntelliJ will just automatically figure out where to close the strings and put the pluses, and I can reformat that so that my alignment doesn't go mental. And I can do Control-Shift J to rejoin lines as well, if I want to. Which can be useful particularly if you've got big long strings like this. What's kind of sometimes more useful for this sort of functionality is language injection. So in this case, what we've got here, our big long string is actually something which means something. In this case, our big long string is a JSON string. So what I can do is I can Alt-Enter inside this, and I can inject language or reference, and I'm going to inject JSON. And then it's going to, yes, and then it works. So then I get syntax highlighting for JSON inside my string. So now I can see my key value pairs, which can be extremely useful in this case, because now you can see, oh, right, that's really a value, not a key. Yes, a key or a value. So you can get some syntax highlighting. You can do the same thing, for example, with SQL. So I'll put SQL there, and then I'm going to get syntax highlighting on my SQL string instead of just getting simple string highlighting. And then I can do things like, let's see, I even get code completion inside my string for my SQL. If I've actually told IntelliJ where my database is and what the schema is, it can use that to give me code completion inside the SQL. And I can even, I think, will it let me do this? I should be able to run that. Okay, I haven't configured that, but then if I've configured my SQL dialect and where it's connected to, I can select that and run that SQL command in the SQL console. So IntelliJ doesn't just treat it like just a Java string, it knows it has meaning. It's a SQL string, and it can be run against the database. One more thing around strings. You could put emojis in stuff if you want to. I'm too old for emojis, but people like emojis. That's great. You could put them in anywhere, apparently. Like you can put them into commit messages and everything. I never even thought about putting things into a commit message, but you can put good job smiley face into a commit message, which is cool. And one last thing around here is, let's say I copy this line. Obviously, I can paste by doing Control-V, that's fine. But I can also, if I've got anything on the clipboard, which I don't, One of the things I really like about IntelliJ, especially when you start like copying a bunch of different things and you think, oh, I wanted that thing that was on my clipboard, but I've just copied over the thing by copied something else. I do Shift, Control, and V, and it gives me, when it goes away, it gives me my clipboard history. So I can paste any of the last, I think by default it's like 5 items. So any of the last 5 things I've copied, I can paste that whenever I want to. I usually configure this to be at least 20 items because 5 is nowhere near enough. But once you start doing this, especially when you're doing string manipulation, it's super helpful. Right, one more thing on string type stuff is HTML. So as you've probably seen, if you already use HTML editing, you get simultaneous tag editing. So if I change one, the other one changes as well. That's great. That's very cool, actually, because when I was young, I used to do HTML editing in a text editor, and you never know whether your stuff is closed off, whether your tags are closed correctly or not. And IntelliJ just does that for you. One of the other things I like is multiple cursors. Let's see if I've got the right keyboard combination for this. Yes, so if I do Shift, Alt, and use the mouse, which of course we shouldn't be using the mouse because we're in IntelliJ IDEA and we should be using the keyboard for everything, but I can have multiple cursors and I can change things in multiple places at once. I find this useful for text files, XML files, configuration files, where there's often a lot of things repeated. You can also, if the lines are underneath each other, there's a magic keyboard combination for this, which is, where is it? I don't remember what it is. Oh, yes. Double tap Control, and then bring your arrow key down. And then you can do basically a sort of column select, and then edit things there. And one other thing here is, let's get rid of my multiple cursors. If this works, F3, oh, no, it doesn't work. I've used the wrong thing. Oh, no, Shift, Control, Alt, and J. I can select all instances of a specific symbol inside my file. So again, this can be useful. I wouldn't do this inside a Java file because I would usually use refactoring if I was going to rename something. But inside text files, I might want to say I don't want to use TDs anymore. I want to use divs everywhere. So it could be useful for that sort of thing. Right, now, let's get on to refactorings because refactoring is my favorite activity and my favorite set of features. We have, let's look at invert Boolean. Tobias showed some of the refactorings for Java 8 already, which is a bit of a shame because I could basically, in fact, I have spent 50 minutes just talking about Java 8 refactorings in the past, but we're just going to spend a tiny amount of time on that because we've already seen some of that. So you can do, as you know, there's like millions of refactorings you can do in IntelliJ IDEA. You can do things like Alt-Enter will allow you to invert your if condition if you want to, so you can flip things around, taking away a not or inserting a not. Oh, let's see if it'll do it. Invert, that's fine. One of the things that I've noticed with recent versions of Java, if you do it with optional, for example, it won't just put a not in front of it, it will genuinely invert it. So instead of saying optional.isPresent, it will use optional.isEmpty instead. So if there's like a reverse method, it will use the reverse method when you invert the Boolean. So it's quite useful from a readability point of view. Okay, we have got, let's look at some of the Java 8 refactorings. If you're using Java 8, you've probably seen a bunch of these anyway. For example, we already saw in the last talk a bunch of stuff about going to and from for loops to stream operations. Oh, and this is a good opportunity to show something else. So I like my stream operations all lined up with the dots one above another. I don't want to see one method here, one method here, one method here. So I can show you another trick by, if I go, let's select this. Let me do Alt-Enter on this. It says Adjust Code Style Settings. It will show me just the code style settings that apply to this block of code. Now, if you're like me and you've tried to apply a consistent style to your code, and you open up the code style settings in the big dialog, you're like, there's 50,000 different settings here, and I don't know which magic incantation I need. This will show you just the ones you want. So here, if I go to wrapping and braces, on chained method calls for streams, what I want is I want to say wrap always, and then it will line up my stream operation very nicely. And so I can either like revert that if that's not what I want, or I can save it, and so I get my nicely lined up stream operation. So I like this, especially when I'm migrating code from old Java to Java 8 or beyond, because it gives me much better visibility over what's happening in the stream operations. So yeah, so we can see, you've seen these before probably, you can automatically convert to counts, you can automatically convert to sum operations, you can automatically convert, you can even get really complicated operations like this, and just replace it with a really complicated collect operation instead. I used these heavily when I was moving to Java 8 because I didn't really understand what filter map reduce meant. And this is a really good way of migrating my brain. So that's the Java 8 ones. There's a whole bunch of stuff around optional. Optional, of course, came in Java 8, but has been updated in Java 9, Java 10, Java 11. So that's always getting new methods. And IntelliJ is always giving us new suggestions to say, you could be using optional in a much better way if you want to. So, for example, let's see. There's a whole new load of methods that you can use. You can replace it with if present, and it will simplify code. I mean, this is what IntelliJ does. It just says, you've written loads of long code. Would you like me to condense it into one line of code instead? And you say, yes, please. And that's what you do. So you use Alt-Enter to make everything much, much simpler. And so we have those obviously for Java 8, Java 9, Java 10. I'm going to show you Java 12 because all of you on Java 6 are going, please don't show us Java 12. It's so far in the future, I can't even imagine. So the Java 12 feature is switch expressions are kind of, switch statements are kind of nasty, right? And we shouldn't really be using switches anyway. They do look like code from the 1980s. And in Java 12, they've been simplified to switch expressions. And so you get way less code, you don't have nasty breaks, you don't have nasty anything, and you get to use a lambda. So, and of course IntelliJ just does that for you, so you're like, okay, yes, please use the shiny new features of Java so that I don't have to learn what they are. So that's Java 12, you should migrate now. From 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 to, no, just go from 8 straight to 11. Just forget all the ones in the middle. What else? How much time have we got? And what do I really want to show? I mean, you probably know the basic refactorings. Like, I already showed a bit of extract variable. What is this? So, you can do extract variable to give me so I can reduce duplication. I can do extract method to, what have we got here? So yes, so I could do something like extract this into a method, Control-Alt-M. I'm going to say, yeah, let's call it getStrings, why not? And it will put things into a new method. Yeah, so you can use all the amazing refactorings to simplify your code. If you've got big methods like this, you should be thinking about breaking them down into smaller methods. You can do things like extract functional parameter. So it's one thing to use lambda expressions when you're using something like the Streams API. It's another thing to try and introduce methods that take lambda expressions in your code base, because it's a different way of thinking for a lot of us Java developers. You can do this with IntelliJ. So let's say in this method, we wanted this I plus string bit to be a lambda expression which is passed in by the method that calls us. So we can use Control, Shift, Alt, P. which is handy. And then IntelliJ goes, which of these magic functional interfaces do you want to use? And I'm like, okay, I should probably use I use by function because that's the one that comes in the JDK. And then it does all the complicated generic stuff that Java 8 lambdas need because Java's interesting. And then it gives you the lambda expression up here and applies it here. So in this case, you'd probably look at this example and go, I don't think I want to pass a lambda expression in there, but you can use this refactoring to start playing with your code and see like which bits might benefit from moving code around the same way we do with extract method, extract variable, and so on and so forth. Right, we have 10 minutes? Yes. Okay, what can I show you in 10 minutes? Oh my goodness, we've got data analysis, we've got working with tests, we've got the debugger, we've got databases, version control. Version control is my favorite, along with all my other favorites. All right, I'm going to take a vote. Who wants to do data flow analysis? And you've got two options, data flow analysis or version control. Data flow analysis? That's a lot of you. Version control? Oh, for goodness sake, that's like a 50-50 split. All right, 2 minutes on data flow analysis and 2 minutes on version control, all right? Data flow analysis. So this was mentioned in the last talk as well. This was mentioned quite a lot in the last talk. One of the things that you can do is you can use the magic incantation of, I always get this wrong, it is Shift, Control, and P on Windows twice. All right. And that gives you the result of the data flow analysis. Here, it goes, okay, well, date.getMonth could be any integer value. You're like, okay, fine. But then later on, after you've gone through a few different if statements, you say, okay, now tell me what could, I said getMonth, wasn't it? What could date.getMonth be down here? So I do Control-Shift-P twice, and it says, it's an int, and it's in the range of 1 or 3 through 12. And you're like, oh, that's quite useful. And then down here, you can do the same thing, and it says it's 2, basically. It has no range. It is 2 at that point in time. So you can use this to help you debug. You can use this to help you reason about how you're going to write your flow control stuff. I find that super useful. And I think there was some other stuff about data flow analysis. And again, this is a bit like, this is the same as the inspection stuff. So, IntelliJ will just say, I don't think you should be doing this. It's not sensible. It just doesn't make any sense at this point in time. So let's see. Oh yeah, so this is some of the examples we saw earlier, that these conditions are always true. So you just say, okay, then I'm not going to do it. So yeah, all of this says like the results here is always false, this result is always false, and so you can use these warnings. They're not all magic fixes, they're just warnings for you to go, oh, okay, I probably have a logical error in my code, or I probably wrote my tests wrong, or I'm going to have to go away and think about this a bit more. This is not necessarily a magic, go away and fix this, get IntelliJ to fix my code for me thing. All right, well, that was 2 minutes on data flow analysis. Right, version control. How many of you are using a command line tool to work with Git? Like all of you, right? You're doing it wrong. No, you're not. You can do what you like, whatever tool works for you. I think quite visually, so I use IntelliJ ideas and version control stuff quite a lot. Now, obviously, you know that you can do Control and K to commit. And obviously, your commit dialog, it shows you all of the things that you can commit. You're going to write yourself a little message, which is descriptive and explains what you did, not just, oh, stuff, it doesn't work, nothing works. Did you know that you get the list of your previous commit messages here, so you can reuse previous commit messages if you want to? Obviously, you can see at the bottom, you can see a diff view of each of your individual files. Partial commits, which I originally said partial commits are a stupid idea. That's a good way to commit something that doesn't compile, and then I use them all the time. So you can do things like say, right, I'm not going to commit the import. I'm just going to commit the changes. And it's difficult to see in this resolution, which is an example of something you should never do. Don't not commit the import. That would be that's not going to work. But you can just partially commit some things in a file. So say I'm not going to put that change in. Amend commit, I use this all the time. Never use amend commit if you've already pushed, because that's not a good idea. But if you did something, which is the sort of thing that I do, I've changed 3 files, I commit it, and I'm like, oh no, but I really just need to have this one change in there as well. Make one more change, amend commit, and it will amend your previous local commit. If you've pushed it, then don't bother, because it's just game over. So that's one thing, and I use the log all the time. This is not a great example, because I don't really have a lot of branches, but I use the log to do things like, I can create myself a branch, new branch, at any point in my history. I can call it something like new branch. Generally, by default, IntelliJ IDEA is going to check out that new branch for me, but I don't have to. I could just say, right, create me a new branch there. And it shows it here. And when you're on the log, it shows you which branches that particular commit is in. So that's kind of useful. You have down here, you have a branches list, so I can do things like I can check out any of the branches that I want easily, and I can merge and I can rebase, which I'm going to say I don't have enough time to merge and rebase right now, but just because I'm really worried that if I do like a live rebase, everything is going to mess up really badly. Maybe I could do a live merge, I'm not really sure. It's a bit risky, I'll be honest. But you can do merging and rebasing and cherry picking. I quite often use cherry picking for my demo code because I want like this stuff from here over here. And a lot of the complicated stuff that you want to do in Git in particular is available inside IntelliJ IDEA. And it's for me, I find it quite nice to be able to visually see, is that branch actually hanging off the commit I want it to be hanging off? Did that branch really merge or did it rebase? Or was I rebasing the wrong branch onto the wrong branch? Because I've done that before too. So visually, this is very useful. And of course, you can just look at just the branches that you want, if you want to. And you can look at specific users and things like that. But in this code base, that's not useful because the specific users are me, 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 me. Let's see if Hattie's in here. Are you in here? No, okay. Anyway, it was his code. He should be in here somewhere. So that's VCS. 5 minutes left. We did inspections. We did data flow. We did a little bit of working with tests. We haven't done debugging much. Should we do a bit of debugging? Or do you want me to take 5 minutes for questions? Debugging, huh? Okay, let's show debugging. Oh no, show debugging going wrong. Okay, so okay, so basic debugging. There's some really cool stuff in debugging, obviously, and I can never remember the keyboard shortcuts for debug for some reason. So let's debug it. I tend to use the run inside the context thing, so I use Shift, Control, and D, which I can't remember if I've mapped that myself. Anyway, so I'll open that in debug mode. Obviously, so I placed a breakpoint. I placed a breakpoint by using the mouse, which you shouldn't do. There is a keyboard shortcut for that. And then it will stop here. And I can see here, I can see my variables. I can add a new watch in here if I want to. So let's see, maybe I want to look at order item. And it will show me what order item looks like. And then I look at that and I say, it's difficult to see in this text, isn't it? But order item, when I'm looking at it, it actually just shows me the default toString method for order item, which is the pointer, I guess. And that's not very useful. So what I might want to do is I might want to create a custom data type renderer. So for order type, I'm going to use, I want to show you, I don't know. Oh, that's a really bad example, actually. Let's do customer product. Let's do product. So if I put, oh my goodness, see, it always goes wrong at the wrong time. Control F2 to stop everything. Go back. Let's start this again. I'm going to add a watch for product. Product doesn't give me much useful information. Obviously, I can do what I normally do is open it up and look at all the values inside product. That's fine. But for a summary version, I might want to see some specific field. So I'm going to view as, create a new data type renderer, use the following expression of this dot, for example, title, maybe. And then, the title is null. Let's use ID. I just saw that. That's fine. I'm going to get rid of that. Change this one to ID. And so now, when I'm looking at product, I can see the product ID here. So I see like some summary information. 0 minutes left. And of course, you've already seen that you can see in this kind of, you can see the basic version, the basic information as you're debugging. But this custom view will appear up here. So it's a really good way to sort of annotate your debugger with more additional information. I am out of time. One more thing I do want to say, even though I'm out of time, is you can also add a condition on here. So I might want to add a condition of only stop on this breakpoint if the product is not equal to null, for example. And then that allows me not to have to stop at that breakpoint every single time, even when it's values I don't care about. Right, so we're out of time. I'm going to be hanging out around by the booth, so you can come and ask me questions anytime you want to. But basically, thank you very much. You've been an amazing audience.